Hello and welcome to episode 289 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. We are well past the midway point now, boys. Only 8 more weeks left in the regular season, but still I think some pretty wild swings in player values as we sit down here today to talk about our rest of season top 150. Joining me for these pods each week are the two men you know and love. It is Mike Leone of Establish the Edge, of Analytics Directing, former Thunderdome winning, other Virgin activities. Mike Leone, of course, and then it is also our projections lead, slaving away at the decimals all day, all night to ensure that we are on top of it for DFS and for props in both NBA and NHL. It is Mark Dankenbring. Leone, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let's do this. Ready for the stretch run.
Mark, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here as always.
On today's show, of course, we will be talking player outlooks for the rest of the season. In other words, if we were drafting today, what would our rankings look like? If you are an in-season subscriber, you do have access to our rest of season top 150, which comes out each Wednesday. Before we get into it, I have to remind everyone that if you've been on the fence about trying out ETR, we have reduced our price to reflect mid-season, now $149.99 for everything we do on the NFL side from now through the Super Bowl. That includes props, includes the Discord, all the premium shows, projections, ownership content, everything. All right, boys. I think the story of at least the last week has been all these running back injuries. And Leone and I talked about it a lot on Monday in the tournament recap show, but it's also wreaking some havoc on season-long teams as well. I mean, people who had Alvin Kamara, people who had Damian Harris, people who had Aaron Jones, et cetera, you're going to see swings in value. So I want to start with kind of the Green Bay thing because I think it's super interesting. You know, I think Aaron Jones was performing well, maybe not as well on a consistent basis as I thought he would before the season, but the A.J. Dillon thesis was playing out the way that I thought that it would. And we were all over A.J. Dillon before the season in round 10, 11. He got up into round 8 or 9. The idea was standalone value for A.J. Dillon, which he was getting. And then also, if anything happens to Aaron Jones, my God, A.J. Dillon can just go nuclear. So now that we have this Aaron Jones injury, and it doesn't seem significant, 1 to 2 weeks, we know what A.J. Dillon's going to be the next couple weeks. I think figuring out how we would rank him going forward after that is another story. Mark, what do you think about the Green Bay situation? And I didn't even realize they have a bye coming up. I'm so in DFS, I don't even realize that they have a bye coming up. But indeed, they do have a bye coming up as well, which I think is a factor.
Yeah, so week 13, obviously, we're about to start week 11. So week 11 and 12 should be, RB1 projection weeks for A.J. Dillon. The outlook is very good for him. We're projecting in this week for 16-plus carries and a double-digit target share. So he's projecting as an RB1. The Packers are hopefully get David Bakhtiari back either this week. If not then the next week, and they have a top 5 offensive line, according to Brandon Thorne. So elite offensive line, just elite volume there for A.J. Dillon. And as you said, we were kind of expecting as we get into the colder winter months up there in Lambeau that A.J. Dillon would take over and have a bigger role. And it seems like that's going to be the case.
The zero RB bros are running naked through the quad right now, Leone, because it's A.J. Dillon's season at the exact right time. Anything to add about the Packers running back situation?
Yeah, I mean, before last week, it's kind of crazy. Dillon did not have a rushing touchdown on the year. So I do think, Jones being out is a pretty big deal, especially, even with Dillon's role ascending, if he can start getting a little bit more of a grapple on the red zone rushing role and see that touchdown upside hit, because that was part of the thesis behind Dillon was like, we were kind of getting the standalone value in terms of carries and a couple of targets, but I really thought this was a guy that could score double-digit touchdowns, even in a handcuff role. So we saw the 2 touchdowns last week. I think there's a lot of touchdown upside there rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we did that draft with A.J. Dillon. He was really was the man, rooting for him for sure. And honestly, A.J. Dillon has shown targets per route. He hasn't run a ton of routes, but he's had 4 catch games, I think multiple times this year. It's definitely in him. And so I think A.J. Dillon is a smash. And even when Aaron Jones comes back, I can't be certain that A.J. Dillon, even with the bye, is going to be 100% and resume his role because A.J. Dillon's going to play really well. And so I could see something more even there. And so I really like A.J. Dillon rest of way. By the way, if anybody's watching on YouTube, Leone has a haircut here, in which if you've seen the movie Jarhead with Jake Gyllenhaal, that's actually what he looks like. So, yeah.
You can't compare me to Jake. He's been taking some heat lately. Something with Taylor Swift. I don't know. I'm not into those streets, but it sounds like, he's getting canceled. I don't know.
Well, I have no idea what you're talking about, obviously.
Sounds like you're in the streets a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not in the streets, but this is the
I've got
Taylor
my
Swift
toes in the water. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just say with Dylan real quick? You mentioned the pass catching, super small sample, but he's caught 18 to 20 targets and averaging 12.1 yards per catch. Those are, pretty huge numbers. And a lot of times we talk about guys out of college who don't catch football in college, and we assume that means they're not good at it, but really they just weren't asked to do it. And Dylan could be of that mold.
Okay. Other big injury was Alvin Kamara. And so we don't know, we had word from Underhill today that he doesn't know. He thinks it's up in the air on Alvin Kamara for this week. I mean, you saw Mark Ingram start off really slow, but he ended up getting there last week. I mean, Mark Ingram's an 11-year veteran playing the running back position. I think he looks kind of fresh, though. My biggest concern with Ingram going into the week was the Taysom Hill stuff. Taysom Hill ended up with only 5 quarterback snaps, didn't play a huge role. I think Kamara probably sounds like he'll be, if not this week, the next week. So how are you thinking about New Orleans stuff going forward, Leone?
I'm still pretty high on Mark Ingram. I was looking at our ranks. I think maybe we could have him a little bit higher. Like if you look at other comparable, handcuff backs, like, Chuba Hubbard, for example, I think Ingram has, obviously a little bit more short-term upside if Kamara can't play this week. But then even looking long-term, if you view them both as handcuffs, like Ingram actually has some standalone value over Hubbard, the way they're going to play. And I think Ingram with Kamara out, it's better than Hubbard with McCaffrey out. Not to just make this like an Ingram versus Hubbard comparison, but I think like if you're looking at handcuffs and deciding why Ingram has value, it's kind of crazy that, this guy who was total dust with Houston has found his way into a big fantasy role, which it should be pointed out, he has 12 targets the last 2 weeks. I mean, they're using him in the pass game, whether they should or they shouldn't. They are doing that. And the 5-target game came in, a game with Kamara played. So there's a decent amount of upside here just based on volume. And as far as running back carries go, last week he had 14 carries. I think Dwayne Washington had 2, Ty Montgomery had 1. Those were the 17 carries outside of, Taysom Hill, quarterback, wide receiver stuff.
Yeah, and even before Alvin Kamara got hurt, Mark Ingram was playing on like 30% of the snaps and seeing, 30% of the running back targets roughly. So yeah, I agree on Mark Ingram standalone role. Speaking of standalone role, Evan and I have been talking about Ramondre Stevenson I don't know, seemingly all year since the preseason. I mean, for those guys who played preseason, Ramondre Stevenson was a legit star in the preseason. One of the most prestigious honors you can actually get is to be on Adam Levitan's first team all preseason team, and Ramondre was actually on that team this year. They didn't seem like they really wanted to use him very much before the Damian Harris injury. I mean, there was that week that Ramondre was inactive because he blew a pass protection assignment the week before. But man, I hate to get into running back talent stuff, but it's so clear that this dude is good, and for a big back, really good in the pass game. So Damian Harris, I'm not sure if he's playing tomorrow night or not in the showdown slate. But Ramondre Stevenson, I think, has earned something on base. The problem is Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson both only play in base. So I'm not sure there's enough room for both of them. Mark, how are you thinking about Patriots running back going forward?
Yeah, well, if Damian's out again, I mean, Ramondre really dominated the opportunities there. He had 20 of the team's 29 running back carries, and 3 of those were from J.J. Taylor on, the last drive when they were up 31. So it's essentially 20 of 26 running back carries, which is over 75%. So we'd love to see that. And he only ran 9 routes, but he did lead the team with 5 targets. So that's a little unsustainable. Brandon Bolden will be in there on third downs, as you mentioned. But the base work, they drew up some screens for him. This game was actually one that I had on Sunday, so I was able to watch pretty closely, and he looked great. Trent Brown is back for the Patriots on the offensive line. So their offensive line, I think, will continue to play better as the season goes along. And it seems like Mac Jones and just that offense is starting to click. So for Ramondre's in there, I think he's an easy start. I don't know if he'll eat into Damian's workload at all if they're both healthy. I could see him being activated along with Damian and Brandon Bolden if it's just the three of them, and maybe he gets some work. But I think, the real value here is obviously if Damian's out, and then I don't necessarily think he's playable if Damian's back and healthy.
Yeah, see, I don't know, man. I think he may have earned like a share of the early down work. I don't know. Like, it's hard with these situations. And I feel kind of the same way about AJ Dillon. Like, I feel like they've earned it, whether the starter's injured or not. They've earned more stuff down the stretch. I don't know, Leone, what you think about Ramondre in that context.
I think Dylan's more likely to have earned a role than Ramondre. Like, Dylan was already being worked in. We already saw that. We've seen Ramondre's role be very volatile, whether he's inactive or he's active. So I'm a little bit more concerned that when Damien Harris comes back, I think he should have earned a bigger role, but and you say this all the time, Levitan, what I think doesn't matter. What are the coaches actually going to do? What do they think? And it's worth stashing, it's worth finding out. He should be on, rostered everywhere, but I'm a little concerned that we could look back on a season and just see this one huge week and not too much else.
Okay. Good news at the running back position. Saquon is back, and from what Jordan's been saying, I think Saquon will be close to 100%. The problem is schedule's not great for the Giants. I mean, it's not bad, but I kind of go back and forth on this because I think the Giants offense can be really good. Like, they have the talent to be really good. The problem is they have Jason Garrett. Offensive line is obviously a struggle, but man, when they have everybody healthy, which I think they actually might now, it's really good. And also Devontae Booker is banged up coming out of the bye. And so Saquon out there with Galladay and Tony and Shep and Slayton and Ingram, I mean, they're pretty good. The problem is they play the Bucks, an angry Bucks team who coming off an embarrassing loss to Washington this week. Eagles, I think, have been playing reasonably well on defense. Dolphins have been stepping it up on defense. They have a Cowboys game in there, so they have a Bears game in there. It's not great, but still, like, Saquon's going to be one of the few 3-down plus goal line explosive backs going forward. I think I'm excited about Giants stuff, man. And I'm always excited about Giants stuff. I've been a Danny Dimes truther, especially in fantasy, for a while now. Mark, what do you think about them going forward? We have Saquon 20th overall right now. I could see that being light considering the bye and the injuries out of the way, considering his ceiling. But I understand he hasn't been that efficient over the last few years anyways. Yeah,
we could potentially move him up a little bit. The top 10 RBs are pretty strong, I think. If Kamara misses this week, I think we would kind of slide him back down below Barkley. But it's all, this injury information is kind of just all up in the air still. So it's difficult to rank. But Saquon, I'm you mentioned tough matchup against Tampa Bay rushing wise, but I think he can catch the ball a decent amount out of the backfield. He's had a really good target share this season, and obviously that's where he's explosive. He's missed over a month, so I would expect him to be close to 100%. And as you mentioned, the bye in the rearview mirror, I'm pretty excited about Saquon's end stretch here. They should definitely feature him. And, is Sterling Shepard expected back this week? Because if he's not, I think that would really help Saquon. If it is, it muddies the water a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I think he will be back, but we'll see coming out of the bye. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think their skill position players are really good. Leone, you've been a notorious Daniel Jones hater for far too long. Are you aware of his rushing ability coupled with the skill players that he has around him? You're on mute. Jarhead, you're on mute. Still on mute.
Tough scene for me here. I was about to make fun of you and your love for Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. I'm stuck on mute, so I feel like I can't come back. I can't really recover from that.
Okay, so you have no Giants comments for the people?
I mean, I think for as far as Barkley goes, you just need the offense to be like tolerable, right? You don't even really need Daniel Jones to hit in a big way because, as you said, he's going to be one of the few true 3-down workhorse role running back, assuming he's fully healthy, which it sounds like he is, because he had COVID and then the bye week. It sounds like he's really had a lot of time to get healthy from the actual ankle injury itself. So I'm pretty excited for Barkley down the stretch. I do kind of want to see like 1 or 2 games to make sure they're not easing him in and just make sure this offense is functional, I guess is the right word. And the schedule, I don't think is as bad as I think a game versus Dallas in the playoffs isn't a bad one to have versus the Bears in the playoffs. I don't know. I'd probably be aggressive in trying to get Saquon now because it's about as cheap as you're going to get him rest of the season.
All right. This Rams wide receiver situation, Leone, got super muddled. I mean, first they had Odell. Then we find out that they lose Robert Woods for this season. I'm excited for the chance for Van Jefferson. the Odell thing, God, I mean, he has not played well in a very, very long time. He is dealing with a shoulder injury, but he's clearly going to play ahead of Ben Skowronek. We actually need to change the tags here so that he shows up for Rams. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't really have strong takes other than I still like having Van Jefferson on my team going forward. What do you think about the Rams now that everything's kind of dust has settled around their wide receiver situation?
Yeah, I mean, we saw the opportunities there for Van Jefferson in the game the other night. He dropped, had a few tough drops. One kind of on a long gainer in the middle of the field, and then he had a touchdown that I don't know if he thought the defender was going to tip it away or what. But the opportunities were there, and drops are pretty volatile. That's not really a stable statistic. The fact that he's getting these opportunities and getting open is more important, and that role for the Rams is just going to see the field a ton. They don't have a lot of depth at wide receiver, even with Odell there, between Odell and Skowronek, I mean, Van Jefferson's going to have to play 80+% of the snaps. And unless we see a real big resurgence from Odell, if you're second in line in targets on this Rams offense, you're going to be doing pretty well. So I think it might even be a buy low opportunity on Van Jeff with him leaving those points out on the field Monday night.
Yeah, totally agree. And if you go all the way up to the top here, we obviously still do have Cooper Kupp as the overall wide receiver one, second overall behind the total freak. I mean, Christian McCaffrey, my God, what a freak. So yeah, we have Cooper Kupp second overall right now in the top 150. Do have 3 wide receivers in the top 5 though, which I certainly like Tyreek and Devontae Adams as well. Let's go to a couple more quick ones here. The Broncos are loaded, man. Like, I mean, when you can put Judy, Tim Patrick, Courtland Sutton, Fant, Alberto, Javonte Williams, and Melvin Gordon all in a game together, like you should be very, very productive. I guess Teddy is just like not capable of it. Although we saw Teddy support some really good wide receivers in Carolina, obviously, and support Christian McCaffrey and Mike Davis when they were active last year. They did not throw the tight end at all. And I think Fant and Albert O soaking up is taking away some of that. But Judy's targets per route run are awesome. I'm still super optimistic on Judy. I had trouble pulling the trigger on him Sunday in DFS because I was like, my God, they have so many guys. So what do you think about Denver right now, Mark, our hometown Denver Broncos?
Yes, sir. Hometown Broncos. It's when doing the projections for this week, or they're actually on bye, but just look through them anyway. Someone has to get squeezed there on target share, and it looks like it's going to be Courtland Sutton. He only has 9 targets and 5 catches and 78 yards in the last 3 games. Without Judy, he was averaging 6 catches per game for 87 yards. So he was averaging more per game than he's gotten over the last 3 with Judy back in the lineup. So it looks bad there. We noted last week some issues with their offensive line, and going up against Philly's D line, there was just a lot of pressure there against Teddy, and he wasn't able to push the ball down the field. So I think that is definitely an issue for Sutton over Judy. But I mean, I still feel decent about Noah Fant as well. He's earned a decent target share between 18 and 20% when he's been out there. So I think he's still playable at tight end. But Judy, Sutton, I don't really know what to do with Sutton in season-long leagues. If you obviously have better options at wide receiver, I would say you could feel comfortable sitting him. But, he's kind of one of those guys. It only takes one big play for him to get there.
Sure. Yeah, and we saw Sutton have some huge games while Jerry Jeudy was out and stuff like that. But, man, I mean, I thought my take before the season was Jerry Jeudy was a better prospect, better athlete, and not coming off of an ACL tear. And that's kind of been the way it's played out when Jerry Jeudy has been healthy. Couple more quick ones here. Leone, Cam Newton's back, baby. Cam Newton, he plays 2 snaps and he scores 2 1-yard touchdowns. I mean, this is what he's been doing when he's been active. I don't no idea if he can still throw the football. Like when Cam was good, Cam was an unbelievable fantasy player, like absolutely unbelievable. And his weapons in Carolina are far better than he had in New England last year. I thought that was a big reason why he struggled last year. Yeah, he was banged up. His arm and stuff wasn't what he used to be, but they had nobody. He has really good weapons in Carolina. So I'm kind of in a pretzel over how Cam Newton's going to fare in Carolina. What do you think about him and how he impacts the rest of the Panthers?
Yeah, I was saying to Mark, offline that it's really hard even for DFS to project him because you can see it going south, right? Like, if he can't have a functional offense and they just can't consistently pick up first downs, But at the same time, he almost always projects well because the red zone rule for him is just so absurd. The 2 short touchdowns that you hit on that he had last week, as a part-time player. So we still have him projecting really well. And that supporting cast, I think, is a pretty big deal. The fact that he's got some really big yak guys with DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey there that I do think helps that offense be consistent enough, be functional enough, provide those red zone goal line opportunities for Cam that, I mean, he should be, you should have him in every league. I was kind of tilted. I had picked up PJ Walker, a couple of weeks ago in some leagues, and now that's totally dead. And then I was a little bit too late to the wire to get Cam Newton, but I'd be pretty optimistic. I mean, there's not that many quarterbacks that can run for 2 touchdowns on any given week. Is just, will there be enough other volume and base amount of fantasy points to go along with it?
Okay, last thing I want to hit on here. I don't even know if we should talk about it because the Atlanta run game is so broken, man. I really don't care who's back there. I guess if CPAT's back there, it's fine. This run game has been broken going back to like when Devontae Freeman was dusted a couple years ago or a few years ago. I mean, Mike Davis has just been like the poster boy for dead zone, and not because nobody can ever hit in the dead zone, because obviously people hit like DeAndre Swift or whoever else was in the dead zone that ended up hitting. The problem is that Mike Davis, like the only thing he had going for him was volume, basically. And when he starts to not get it, i.e. Cordero takes some, Wayne Gallman takes some, the efficiency is so bad that he's so like unusable. And so like I'd actually be okay dropping Mike Davis. And I know that like CPAT's banged up, and maybe I wouldn't drop Mike Davis until we found out more clarity on CPAT. But like there's no part of me that wants to start Mike Davis, even if CPAT is out on Thursday in season long. So Mark, what are you thinking about Falcons running backs going forward here? Again, CPAT is going to be a game time decision for Thursday's game against the Patriots.
I think if Patterson's out, you could potentially start Mike Davis in a PPR league, just because
I didn't tell him to say that. I want that on record.
Yeah. I mean, just their offense is just so brutal. When you are distributing the target share, it's like you just have to give some to Mike Davis. And you've noted in our Slack a few times that Wayne Gallman got some extra run against the Cowboys because the Falcons were looking ahead to Thursday and wanted to give their starters a rest. So I don't know. Obviously, it's not pretty. Hopefully you could get 5 or 6 catches and maybe Mike Davis gets into the end zone. Not too interested in Wayne Gallman, I don't think, because Atlanta still likes to air it out a bit more. But I think the Patterson injury helps more just Mike Davis pass catching role than it does anything else.
Yeah, no, for sure. Leone, any comments on Mike Davis or just general RB dead zone thoughts? Because like DeAndre Swift was in the alleged dead zone, but you can see the profile for DeAndre Swift, like really good talent, out of this world pass catcher. Teams will be playing from behind a ton, and like you could see it for DeAndre Swift. I guess I don't know. Any dead zone thoughts for the season longs?
Yeah, I mean, people know me. Like I was underweight Mike Davis, but I didn't think he was like the worst pick in that range. But when you're making a pick like Davis, you do have to realize that you're at the mercy of basically the context around him, because he's not going to make his own fantasy value, which is what we're seeing. We actually saw him get what we wanted, right? Like he was getting 50 yards rushing with 4 catches a game. Like but if you look at the amount of red zone opportunities provided for Atlanta, that's the big shift from last year. Todd Gurley, who was total dust, was scoring a bunch of short touchdowns. Mike Davis leads Atlanta in carries inside the 10. And guess how many that is, Adam?
2.
6 on the year inside, 6 on the year inside the 10-yard line. That, that's insane. Patterson has 4. Like there are guys that by themselves have 20 plus, not a lot, like Damian Harris and Jonathan Taylor, but most offenses combined have way more, opportunities there. And that was a big part of the Mike Davis value, is like, would those goal line opportunities be there? And when you're not a super efficient player and the team struggles, like, and that volume starts to slip away, it can go south quickly. Whereas someone like DeAndre Swift, his talent in the passing game was always going to necessitate him being, pretty valuable and having a decent amount of upside. And, a goal line type role for him is almost like the bonus, hitting the upside. It's not the prerequisite that it was for Mike Davis.
Yeah, we have DeAndre Swift 12th overall. Really incredibly strong season for DeAndre Swift despite the context around it. All right, that is going to do it for this rest of season top 150 podcast. Hope you all enjoyed. If you are listening on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Helps us out a lot. It is indeed free. Also, if you're listening anywhere podcasts can be found, hit the subscribe button. It is, of course, free. For Mark, for Leone, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.